So OrangePi sent me this RV2 after they saw my overclocking exploits with the OrangePi 5 Max. Now this is an 8-core RISC-V SoC. It says KYX1 here, but actually it's a SpaceMit K1 SoC. And since I had never tried RISC-V before, I figured it would be a nice winter project. My original plan was to finish the overclocking guide by the end of last year, and obviously that didn't quite happen. It took a lot longer to get through everything, and actually I haven't still quite finished yet. So in this video, I want to give you an update on where I'm at and what I've done so far. The key thing for a SkatterBencher guide is basically to do some pathfinding for maximum performance of any kind of silicon chip. This typically requires a couple of tools. Tools for monitoring telemetry, tools for adjusting the clock frequencies, and tools for adjusting the voltages. On x86 platforms, usually these tools are provided for in the form of hardware info support, BIOS options, and sometimes custom tuning tools like Shimino's OC Pack. For SBCs, however, these tools are usually less common. For example, for Raspberry Pi 5 and OrangePi 5, I ended up creating my own tools. And the same applies to the RV2. There's not that much support out there currently, so we end up having to put together our own tools. Let me walk you through what I've got so far. When it comes to telemetry, there's two things that we typically want. One, we want a tool that tells us what is the telemetry right here, right now. And then we also want to have a tool that allows us to write out all of the information to a CSV file for further analysis. The tool I built for the OrangePi RV2 is very similar to that of the OrangePi 5 Max. Everything is read directly from existing Linux kernel subsystems and hardware-facing interfaces. That includes the operating frequencies, temperatures, and voltages, as well as CPU usage and performance governors. Here's a breakdown of the telemetry domains and their exact sources. The information provided from the clock summary provides the information as configured by the Linux kernel, but not necessarily the actual clock frequency. I'll get back to that later in the video. The first step in pretty much any SkatterBencher overclocking guide is unlocking the power limits or enabling the performance governors. And just like we did on the OrangePi 5 Max, we can quite easily do this on the RV2 with a simple startup script. For some bizarre reason, I first need to switch the CPU cores to the power save governor before fixing it to performance mode. If I don't do this, then it won't stick to the performance governor. And then we'll launch this startup file using a custom service. After locking the CPU governors to performance, you'll find the CPU frequency locked in at 1.6 GHz. The next step in preparing our SkatterBencher guide is figuring out how to do overvolting, because that will be necessary when we later on try overclocking. The OrangePi RV2 uses the SpaceMit PowerStone P1 PMIC. This PMIC offers 6 buck converters with voltage support from 0.5 to 3.4 volt and 12 programmable LDO regulators. It also has an I2C interface, which will come in handy for adjusting the voltages at runtime. The cool thing about the SpaceMit P1 is that it's very well documented on the SpaceMit website. There's even a full English description of the PMIC registers. That means, in theory, we'd be able to gain full external control over the PMIC. In theory, there are 3 ways how we can adjust the operating voltage. One, we can adjust the voltages in the device tree binary, which the kernel then relies upon to configure the device at runtime. In the OrangePi 5 Max guide, that's how we increase the voltage for the CPU cores and the GPU, for example. 2, sometimes we can gain control via software and communicate using the I2C interface. And 3, lastly, as we did in the Raspberry Pi 5 guide, we can gain control via the hardware itself and hook up, for example, an Elmo Labs EVC2 to the I2C pins, which in this case is pin 44 and 45, or we can manipulate the feedback circuit. The preferred method is option 2, via software access. That's because it would allow us to adjust the voltage at runtime, unlike option 1, and we wouldn't need to solder anything, unlike option 3. Now, option 2 isn't straightforward, because the PMIC is actually in use by the kernel to dynamically adjust the voltage according to the DVFS or OPP frequency tables. So with the Raspberry Pi 5, for example, I ended up using the Elmo Labs EVC2, and for the OrangePi 5 Max, I ended up adjusting the voltages in the device tree binary. That's mainly because I thought it wasn't possible to gain control over the PMIC I2C at runtime. However, that turned out not to be true. In a comment on my RK3588 GitHub repo, SPC enthusiast HBIYIK mentioned how they implemented VR control for the RK806 regulator used on the OrangePi 5 Max. Since that was possible, I also wanted to figure out if I can do this for the RV2. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I know much of everything that's going on here, but the long story short is that we basically have to build a kernel module that will give us access to that I2C communication. And then we can build a TUI to interact with it and program any voltage that we want. Our tool consists of a couple of files. The module registers a special device, then programs in user space can open this device and send simple commands to read or set voltages. Under the hood, the module talks directly to the PMIC over I2C, bypassing the kernel's normal CPU voltage management. So even though the kernel might still try to override or set the voltage, we now have a tool that can override whatever the kernel has decided before that. To use the module requires two distinct steps. In the module folder, you have to make the module, and this will produce a bunch of files, including sp8821.ko. Then insert the module using the insmod command. This needs to be done before loading the TUI. Our voltage regulator TUI takes care of two things. First, the Python driver talks to the kernel module, and second, our TUI talks to the Python driver. In practical terms, it allows us to override the kernel configuration and set our voltage manually. Now, obviously, we have to double check that whatever we set in our tool is actually applied on the device. And there's two ways to check that. We can check our telemetry tool, or we can just check it on the hardware itself. For option 2, I started mapping the voltage readout points on the PCB. So for example, let's try and set the DC-DC1 rail to 1.2 or 1.25 volt. Last but not least, any overclocking guide also needs actual overclocking, increasing the frequencies. Now on the RV2, that's not as trivial as it may sound, as there's a couple of layers that we need to understand how it works in order to increase the actual frequencies. Now, let's first have a look at the CPU frequencies. Here we can identify a couple of actors. The CPU frequency subsystem is the Linux kernel's framework for dynamic CPU frequency scaling. It provides standard interfaces and governors that decide how and when to adjust CPU frequencies. SoC-specific CPU frequency drivers translate these decisions into hardware-specific actions. Supported frequency and voltage pairs, better known as the operating performance points or OPPs, are typically defined in the board-specific device tree. Together with the SoC-specific frequency driver, they determine what the clock control unit driver programs the SoC registers to. The first place to check is usually the CPU frequency driver. On the RV2, we can access the available frequencies with the following command. We can adjust the frequency with scaling max frequency and scaling set speed. For example, we can set the maximum frequency to 1000 MHz with the following command. This will work with any performance governor, but if we want to define a specific clock frequency, we can also switch the governor to user space and define the frequency directly. Now, you can only pick a frequency from the available frequencies. This list is determined by the CPU cluster's OPPs or operating performance points. These points are basically VF points, which are defined in the board-specific device tree binary. We can find the OPPs in the device tree that's loaded at boot, and we can find the specific device tree binary by first checking the boot.cmd file. Now we can check the OrangePi ENV.txt configuration file. And then we can convert the binary DTB into a human-readable DTS file. Now we can look through the device tree and find the operating points. They're defined in OPP tables 0, 1, and 2. When I first looked through the DTS, I was very excited because it seemed there was an easy 1800 MHz OPP we could unlock by removing the turbo mode requirement. To try that, you can simply remove that one line for each OPP table and reconvert the modified DTS file into a DTB file. Then place the modified DTB file into the DTB folder and edit the OrangePi environment text file. Once you reboot, it should automatically boot to 1800 MHz. However, that wasn't the case, even though the 1800 MHz frequency point was exposed to the CPU frequency driver. To understand why, we need to look at the next layer of CPU frequency configuration, the hardware-specific CPU frequency driver. The KY-X1 SoC has its own CPU frequency driver, which is compiled into the kernel and then used by the Linux kernel CPU frequency driver. Reading through this file, we can quickly figure out what's preventing us from boosting to 1800 MHz. There's a defined K1 max frequency. This limitation is called in the SpaceMit CPU frequency verify function, with a lot of typos, where the driver checks which SoC is used and then limits to 1800 and 1600 MHz accordingly. This is easily patchable. We can simply redefine the K1 max frequency limitation to any value higher or equal to 1800 MHz. And then recompile the Linux kernel, and it should boost. And that's exactly what I did, and turned out we were correct. The KY-X1 now boosts to 1800 MHz. Unfortunately, the 1800 MHz setting isn't too stable for now, as it fails to pass 7-zip even with 1.25 volt. Of course, the next question is how to get even higher frequencies. On to the next layer. While the SoC-specific CPU frequency driver handles the policy-related requests, it's the clock control unit, or CCU, that manages the actual clock changes in the SoC registers. But before that, let's go and have a look at the SpaceMit documentation on this device or this SoC's clock tree. Double thumbs up to SpaceMit for providing such detailed information on how the SoC clocking works. What we find is that PLL3_D1 and D2 serve as main reference clock to both CPU clusters. D1 and D2 stand for divided by 1 and divided by 2. These connect to the high clock, which is one of the available PLL input clocks for each of the two clusters. The core clock then serves as an input clock for the cluster 0 and cluster 1, ACE, TCM, A clocks, and P clocks. PLL3D1 and D2 are 2 of the 8 available PLL3 subclocks, while PLL3 itself is derived from the 24 MHz clock crystal. By default, PLL3 is 3.2 GHz, but it can also run at different frequencies depending on the SoC configuration. Also important is that there's other devices also using the PLL3 reference clock. To get back to the CPU frequency, when the Linux kernel CPU frequency driver wants to change the frequency, it first negotiates with the SoC-specific KY-X1 frequency driver what's the appropriate frequency, limited by the maximum frequency and the OPPs, and it then relies on the CCU driver to actually program the SoC registers. In our case, we want to increase the operating frequency above 1.8 GHz. And not only do we need an operating performance point that is above 1.8 GHz, we also need to make sure the SoC knows how to program the PLL3 clock frequency. In the CCU driver, we can find a handy table for the PLL3 configuration. In theory, this should allow us to program at least 4 frequencies higher than 1800 MHz. So I tried adding an OPP for 2 GHz, but unfortunately I got a kernel panic before loading the operating system. That probably means it's trying to apply the frequency, but something is unstable. Now, what would be even more useful is if we would be able to adjust the clock frequencies at runtime. So we wouldn't need to always reboot and read from the OPP tables to set a certain frequency. That was basically how we got the high frequency on the Rockchip RK3588 on LN2 in SkatterBencher number 91, I think it was. The positive news is that, once again, SpaceMit is providing a lot of register documentation on their developer website. I put together a preliminary tool to read and write register values at runtime to help with debugging. It includes a range of relevant registers for the CPU, GPU, VPU, and other IP. I think most of it is correct, but the tool is still very much an alpha version. SpaceMit is opening up a lot of configuration options, but not all the important registers for our overclocking adventure are accessible. Specifically, the registers related to PLL3 programming are not only read-only, but we can also not read out the entire value. For example, according to the PLL3 table, the SW3 value for 1.6 and 3.2 GHz should be 0xEAAAB, but we only get to see 0xAB. That's it as far as my RV2 overclocking adventure goes so far. So we've been able to increase a little bit on the frequency side, and I think with a little bit more effort, maybe we can get PLL3 going as well, or we maybe find another way to increase the frequencies. But as you can see, there's definitely not enough information yet to turn this into a nice SkatterBencher guide. Now I'll continue to play around with this RV2 single board computer for the next weeks and months. And obviously, if I end up figuring out how to do all of the things that I want to do, you'll see a SkatterBencher guide pop up sometime in the near future. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, drop them in the comment section below. I thank you for watching, the YouTube members and the Patreons for their continued support, and see you next time.